Today, I'm going to try to survive 100 days in Minecraft hardcore mode against the most terrifying enemy in the Halo universe, the Flood. These creatures can infect everything. Animals, villagers, mobs, and even ourselves. And if I want to survive, I have to build a base, fight hordes, and finally escape to the moon in a rocket. Can I last until day 100 without being infected? Day 1. The world I spawned in seemed perfect. The sun was shining, trees were all around me, and there were no signs of danger anywhere. But I already knew something was coming. I had little time before the flood outbreak began. There was no time to waste. The first thing I did was cut down some trees. I gathered enough wood to make my first tools, a wooden pickaxe and an axe. My priority was to find a safe place. Not far from where I spawned, I found a small hill with good visibility and plenty of trees nearby. There, I decided to build my first shelter. It wasn't going to be pretty, but it would be functional and give me the initial protection I needed. I used wood to build a small hut. 4 walls, a roof, a door, and several torches. That was all I needed to get through the first few nights safely. Little by little, I also gathered food. Meat was the quickest way to get there in this environment without going too far. Time passed, and there was no problem or sighting of the flood. No deformed creatures, no strange sounds, no signs of infection. Of course, until now. But this didn't reassure me. On the contrary, I knew this was just the silence before the storm. I took advantage of those calm moments to explore the surroundings a bit, get to know my surroundings and what I could count on. I placed chests in my shelter and began gathering basic materials, charcoal, stone, anything that would help me survive when things got ugly. I surrounded my cabin with more light so I would be visible from afar and organized my resources well. In hardcore mode, I can't die even once, so every little step counted. And so the first day passed before me. Everything seemed normal. I decided to go to sleep for the first night. Until... a ship fell from the sky. A giant rumble shook everything. I ran outside to look, and there it was. A Covenant ship crashed, very close to my base. I couldn't see well in the darkness, but something didn't feel normal. The ship's metal was covered in something strange, like green mold. And then I heard them. Strange noises, like growling, like something was crawling right outside my cabin. I didn't dare go outside. I still didn't have armor, and my stone gear wasn't going to help me against anything serious. I spent the night awake, hoping they wouldn't find me. At dawn, I carefully left. The ship was still there, and yes, it was infected. Blocks with strange textures, parts covered in organic matter. But there were no enemies nearby. A few days passed, and while I didn't find any large flood forms, I did start to notice strange things. The water was contaminated. In certain nearby lakes and rivers, spores were beginning to appear floating, as if the flood were spreading through the environment. I tried to get closer to investigate, and that's when they attacked me. Small forms of infection. Fast, unpredictable, and hard to hit. And worst of all, they did a lot of damage. One of them took too much of my life in seconds. I had to run back to my base and lock myself in again. It was clear the outbreak had begun, but it hadn't yet shown its full power. The flood was spreading slowly, silently, like an invisible plague. I was beginning to notice flesh on the ground as if something had attacked the animals. My priority now was clear: get armor and prepare for a bigger attack. Because if those small spores already put me in danger, I didn't want to imagine what would come next. Now I was no longer alone in this world. With the Covenant ship crashed near my base and the first traces of the flood appearing in the water, I knew I couldn't stay still. I had to go out and explore. I grabbed my axe, some food, and headed in the opposite direction from the ship. I advanced for a few minutes until, among the trees, I found something I hadn't expected. A UNSC base, abandoned. Signs had messages like, restricted area, no entry, temporary observation lab. The whole place was in poor condition, with rusted structures and damaged roofs. It looked like it had been built a long time ago, but there were still useful things inside. I entered carefully, quietly. The doors were open and the interior was empty. Everything was quiet, too quiet. Exploring room by room, I found chests of UNSC supplies, and among them, something that changed my life. A Magnum pistol, a shotgun, a few bullets, grenades, iron, and other materials I hadn't even known what they were for until that moment. I also found healing kits like the ones in Halo Combat Evolved, and some food that came in handy. I also found a weapon crafting table. Apparently I could create my own weapons, ammo, and even a gravity hammer. Wow, I was excited, but for now, I didn't have the necessary materials, so I put the table away to take with me. I quickly put everything back in my inventory, because right at the end of the hallway, I found something even stranger, a laboratory. Broken glass, workbenches, empty containers where they looked like they'd been studying flood methods. Strange stains on the walls and floor everywhere. There was no doubt about it. They tried to investigate or contain the flood here, and clearly something had gone wrong. Before I could leave, night fell. I had to lock myself in. I put blocks on the doors and stood in a corner, my weapons ready. From outside, I could hear the sounds of the flood. Knocks, grunts, and that wet noise they make when they move. But they wouldn't get in. I spent the whole night in silence without sleep, hoping they wouldn't find a way in. At dawn, I gathered what was left and ran back home. I came back with new weapons, but little ammunition. And above all, I came back with one certainty. The flood could have been here much longer than I thought. And if the UNSC couldn't stop them, neither could I, if I didn't prepare better. With what I found at the UNSC base, the first thing I did was the most important thing, a full suit of iron armor. I also made 2 new pickaxes, ready to begin the next phase of the plan, going down into the mines. I needed a lot of resources, iron, coal, aluminum, and anything else I could use to make ammunition from my weapons. I'd already seen how dangerous the flood were, and I couldn't afford to be unprotected. I also needed to start preparing for the finale. The rocket and spacesuit to escape to the moon on day 100. And for that, I was going to need a lot of aluminum, no matter what. I packed a few torches, grabbed some food, and went out looking for caves. At first, I only found completely flooded caverns. Something very strange, as if the environment was changing because of the flood. But after walking a long way, I found a deep cave. This one would do the trick. I entered carefully, using torches for lighting, and began to mine. At first, I only found coal, which was still useful, so I mined quite a bit. But things soon got complicated. Infection forms started to appear, jumping very high and very fast. Then, skeletons, who weren't exactly infected, caused a lot of damage. Remember, I'm in hardcore mode, so the damage was very high. If I die even once, it's all over. As I continued searching for minerals, in the middle of the tunnel, my first real flood appeared. I had to use my pistol and shotgun to defend myself. The few bullets I had left went quickly. After several battles, and with little health, I finally found what I was looking for. Iron, aluminum, gold, even lapis lazuli. I was mining non-stop, when suddenly a rather strange message appeared on the screen. "They are coming," followed by a tremendous roar, which sounded like something giant was moving nearby. I didn't know what it was. I couldn't see anything around me at all, but I knew I couldn't stay down there much longer. I continued mining with what little torches I had left, and when I could barely see anything, I decided to head home. The way back wasn't easy. I had to fight several more flood, and I was out of bullets. But I managed to get home. I cooked all the ores, organized my chests, and with the aluminum and iron I collected, I was finally able to craft lots of new ammo for my weapons. Now I was more prepared. But I also knew something bigger was coming. And if what I heard in that cave was real, I was going to need more than bullets. After returning from the mines and crafting all the ammunition I could, I knew the next step was to better protect myself. My old wooden shack wasn't enough anymore, because now the flood were appearing even during the day. They were increasingly more numerous and more aggressive. So it was the perfect time to build a real fortress. I grabbed my tools and went out to cut down lots and lots of wood. I was going to need several stacks if I wanted to make something strong and large. While cutting down trees, I came across a small group of flood. It was the first time I'd ever used a grenade. There were more and more of them, and they attacked in groups, but I would be able to eliminate them with my weapons, although it was clear to me that they were getting closer. After gathering all the materials, I looked for a new area. Not too far from my house, but far enough to give me more space. I had to flatten the entire area, remove trees, grass, and level the ground. It took me several days, but in the end, it was perfect. The next step was to build a fence around the entire area to prevent the flood from easily entering. And then I got to work. I built a simple wooden house, no frills, but much larger than the previous one, and with space for chests, a workbench, a furnace, and everything necessary to survive the 100 days. The problem was that some flood could jump very high. Sometimes they managed to get over the fences and attack me by surprise, giving me scares I'd rather not tell you about. So I had to be vigilant all the time, always with my weapon ready and checking every corner. Still, this new base gave me something very important: time and protection to plan the real objective, the escape. And it was becoming increasingly clear that the planet was anything but safe. After finishing my new base and reinforcing it, it was time to begin the true objective of this series: escape the planet before the flood consumes everything. I knew the only way to achieve this was to build a rocket to reach the moon, so I initiated the contingency plan. And for that, I was going to need tons of aluminum and other minerals. Wasting no time, I prepared my equipment and returned to the mines. Along the way, I collected iron to continue creating ammunition. I also found gold, and to my surprise, more diamonds. Luck was starting to be on my side, and the best part, I also found a lot of aluminum, just what I needed. Further on, I located some amethyst caves, which, although I didn't know what they were for at first, I would later discover that they were key to creating ammunition for the Needler. This time, the flood inside the caves weren't a big problem. I had plenty of ammo for my weapons, so the confrontations were much more manageable. After a long day of mining, I returned home loaded with resources. I immediately put everything to the fork: iron, gold, and especially the aluminum. With the diamonds I collected, I finally crafted a full set of diamond armor. And not only that, on the special weapons table, I managed to create my first advanced melee weapon, the gravity hammer, a beast of a weapon. And best of all, it didn't need ammo. I waited until nightfall to test it in combat, and yes, the hammer was destructive. Each blow sent the flood flying. Not only was it strong, it also pushed them away, and that gave me a huge advantage. Everything was going well until I heard something strange, a roar, loud, too close to my base. I carefully left, and in the distance, through the fog, I could see something huge. A T-Rex infected by the flood. I was scared. It was huge and it was heading toward me. And it wasn't alone. A bunch of flood were following it. Suddenly, everyone ran toward me, so the fight started. What the heck was that? Let's see. We're going up here. Okay. I don't believe it. Oops, it's coming this way. Really? Is it really a T-Rex? Careful, careful. God. How much health does it lose? Be careful with the hammer. Come on. Oops, I have to get closer to hit it, but it loses a lot of health. Let's eat. Careful, careful. The other floods aren't a problem with the hammer, but the T-Rex is. Wow, what the heck did he throw at me? He poisoned me. Careful, careful. No, I think I should keep my distance and shoot from a distance. This is bad. Let's eat. Oops, just what I needed. Now they have guns. Haha, they even have potions. Okay, let's reload our weapons. Here it comes. It's even dawn. Let's go towards it. Let's see where it is. Okay, there it is. Watch out for the rest of the floods. What I don't like is that we have to reload ammo very quickly. Watch out, here comes the T-Rex. Okay, you kill it. Good. After this confrontation, I was exhausted, but I had won. However, I couldn't relax. I had to keep going. It was time to build the first parts of the rocket, but upon checking, I realized something serious. I didn't have enough aluminum. So without wasting any time, I repackaged my gear and returned to the mines, this time with a single objective: extract more aluminum and charcoal to continue cooking it. I knew every minute counted. The flood wasn't going to wait. And if I wanted to survive the 100 days, I had to have the rocket ready before it was too late. After so many days of surviving, between attacks, escapes, and explorations, I finally felt I was closer to achieving my goal. During my trips to the mines, I had managed to collect enough aluminum. It wasn't easy. More than once, I was on the verge of death down there. But I did it. I returned with the most important mineral to escape this infected world. Immediately, I started cooking the aluminum in my furnaces. I couldn't waste any time. The sound of the melting metal was like a countdown. I knew I had to hurry. As the material was processed, I prepared to build the rocket. It wasn't a quick or simple process. Each piece required time, resources, and concentration. But step by step, the ship took shape. The main structure, the propellants, wings, etc. Everything had to work perfectly, or there would be no second chance. I also made the spacesuit. This was just as important as the rocket. Without the suit, I wouldn't survive a second on the moon. And just as I was about to finish, I heard it, the sound of the infection, guttural screams, heavy footsteps, rapid breathing, and the distinctive hum of the flood. I left my house to see what was happening. The infection was so heavy that the atmosphere felt heavy and I couldn't see far. But there it was, an entire army, outside my house. They weren't the same flood as before. They had evolved. Some wore armor and energy shields. Others seemed faster, smarter. I couldn't stay there. I grabbed my best weapons and went out to fight. Chaos was immediate. Gunshots, blows, explosions everywhere. I took out several, but for every one that fell, 3 more arrived. They were everywhere. I was forced to retreat. It wasn't a fight I could win. I made my way back to my house. I locked everything up, and I focused on the most urgent thing, finishing the rocket and the suit. I had no more room for error. But the infection didn't stop there. Outside, I began to notice something terrifying. The trees. They were mutating. Infected trees began to sprout from the ground. Twisted, dark, and worst of all, they were spewing live spores. Spores that seemed to be seeking new victims. I watched as some of these things managed to break through my outer defenses. My perimeter was no longer safe. The place that protected me for weeks was no longer habitable. I checked my chests, and I no longer had enough food. I only had one golden apple left, and a single ender pearl. I sighed. I knew it was time. I put on my spacesuit. I loaded the rocket into my inventory. I made sure I had the essentials, and I ran out of the house. Outside, hell awaited me. Floods were everywhere. New, more aggressive creatures emerged from the undergrowth. Infected plants were shooting at me. I ran as fast as I could, but their attacks managed to reach me. I was close to dying. My armor held, but it wouldn't hold much longer. And then, as a last resort, I threw the ender pearl in a last attempt to save my life. Luckily, fate favored me. I appeared below the hill where my first house stood, the place where it all began. My hands were shaking, but I positioned the rocket, and I managed. I went up, I activated the takeoff sequence. The engines roared, and as the ship rose, I could see my world, that infected world, moving away. The sky turned dark. The stars appeared. And finally, Earth became a distant dot. After a while, I had arrived. The surface was gray, dusty, silent, but it was also safe. I had arrived on the moon, a lonely place, but without the flood, without infection, without screams or mutations, only silence and victory. I had done it. I survived 100 days on a world infected by the flood and in hardcore mode.